Welcome into The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols alongside our senior writer, Zach Lowe, NBA champ Kendrick Perkins, and we are thrilled, as always, to have Malika Andrews joining us from the NBA bubble at Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. Now, coming up, the Pacers fired their head coach, Nate McMillan, today after the Pacers were swept by the Heat in the first round and just about 14 days after they gave him an extension. Was McMillan's firing fair? We will discuss that. But first, with Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals between the Celtics and Raptors just over 24 hours away from its scheduled tip, the possibility of players boycotting the game continues to remain on the table for both teams after police in Wisconsin shot Jacob Blake, a black man, in the back multiple times at point-blank range. Both teams spoke this morning, and we'll start with Toronto coach Nick Nurse, who had this to say about where the playoffs and his team are at.
They had a meeting last night. It is a player-led thing that I'm here to listen, help facilitate. If there is any leadership thoughts I can provide, I try to provide them, but mostly just listening. I don't think I could probably put a percentage on it or anything, Mike. I think that, again, it's ongoing discussions. I think it is on the table. There's some other ideas on the table as well.
Now, players from both teams had a players-only meeting on Tuesday to discuss the possibility of a boycott, and they're planning on meeting again Wednesday night to further discuss the matter. Pascal Siakam said this.
We came here for a reason, and using our platform and wanting to send a message and hopefully bring awareness and
Now, on the Boston side, we heard Jason Tatum share his feelings about continuing to play in the bubble, saying, quote, "Being a black man in America is more important than what I'm doing out here on a basketball court. Using my platform to use my voice to help create conversations and engage change is more important than anything I can do out there." Tatum continued. He said, "You think about a man getting shot in his back 7 times with his kids in the car. That is way more important than anything I can do out here on the floor." Now, both teams are staying in the same hotel in addition to preparing for the potential start of their playoff series on Thursday night. So, Malika, what are players wanting to see as a result from a boycott? As they are talking about this, what do they want to happen?
Well, Rachel, that's one of the things that players, I'm told, are still trying to figure out, right? But really, the idea of a boycott has gotten a lot of attention because, one, it was one of the specific things that Fred VanVleet and subsequently other players mentioned. But really, there are a lot of options on the table. And to me, the idea of boycotting, it's really a microcosm of how these players are feeling. Because what they are feeling is this. They have knelt. They have worn Black Lives Matter T-shirts. When they were home, they were out in the streets protesting with people in their communities. They have posted on social media. There are players that are organizing initiatives to vote. And all of that, they weren't expecting things to change overnight, but they are not seeing change in the way that they were hoping to. And seeing this again, even though there are these shootings by police more than are caught on camera, seeing it happen again and go viral again is reiterating to them that perhaps what they're doing right now isn't enough. And so the question they are trying to answer is, what is bigger that we can do? And boycotting is one of those things that's bigger. The question, though, is for them right now that they are trying to figure out is, what would we use that time to do instead? Is that going to be the most productive way to affect change? Because that is what this is about, figuring out how they can move that needle forward. And if they are not going to play basketball games, what would they be doing to continue to push that?
And Malika, to follow your point, you're right. And that's the thing that I was wondering and questioning is, what is the plan after boycotting? Listen, we all are going through something right now, dealing with what we're going through in America as far as in social justice. And I commend and I applaud the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics with trying to make a stand and saying that they're willing to boycott games. Now, the thing is that we can't change racism, right? These things have been happening to the African-American community for over 400 years plus, and it's going to continue to happen. The things that we could control is the system. How do we control the system? By voting, by you know, by reaching out. So to me, I think the threat of boycotting gets the owners' attention. And now the owners, and I know in Pags and Wick Grossbeck from the Boston Celtics, are now, they have their antennas up, and I'm pretty sure knowing those guys and how great of a guy those people are, they're going to reach out to their franchise guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and have this conversation and say, well, how can we help? And how can you help is by reaching out to the resources that you have, the people that are governors, that are senators, people that are a part of Congress and the White House to help change. So I applaud them for wanting to make a stance and boycotting, but just the threat alone raise eyebrows and make awareness even to an upper level.
Well, Perk is right. I mean, let's be frank. There are owners in the NBA who haven't done nearly enough on this issue or any other issues of social justice, and they have enormous resources, and a boycott is one way players can leverage the owners into using those resources for good. But on a broader human level, you know, how can you listen to Doc Rivers and George Hill and Fred VanVleet and Jason Tatum talk about what happened in Wisconsin and not understand why some of them would want to be home with their families, why some of them would want to be home in their communities? And I think it's necessary and it's important that players keep the spotlight on this stuff, that we keep the spotlight on this stuff, that we make the discussion about the underlying issues and not what happens on the court or what doesn't happen on the court. And whatever ways that players feel like they need to react on a personal human level, that has to be okay. And they can do whatever they want. And as far as I'm concerned, like, good on them for keeping this in the discussion, good on them for using the leverage that they have. And it's heartbreaking to listen to how helpless they feel. It's heartbreaking to listen to how powerless they feel and how scared they feel. And on a human level, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and it's funny, Malika, I've had people say to me, oh, come on, they're staying at a hotel, they're earning millions of dollars, they're playing basketball. I don't think people really understand what it feels like. All the things you would normally do when facing any kind of trauma, be with your family, be with the people you love who make you feel better. Go out for a long run. Guess what? You can't do that. Right. The hotel where these guys are staying, the longest run is about a mile around the parking lot. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we all use as coping mechanisms to deal with something this significant. Talk to people who are like-minded. Figure out what you can do. Go out and physically do something. We just saw a tweet from Jaylen Brown saying, I want to go protest. He cannot go do that right now from inside the bubble. So they're in such an extremely unique environment. What have you heard about just how constricted they feel right now? And some players saying, look, whether we boycott or not, I just want to go home, because they do have that option. They don't have to sneak out. They can walk out the door anytime they want, correct?
Right. I mean, that's exactly right. They can choose to do that, and they may still choose to do that, right? I asked Jason Tatum, what feels different now to you? Does it feel more constrained being here now than it did a couple of months ago with George Floyd? And that isn't to compare tragedy to tragedy. That is just to talk about what they can do, what they feel they can do here versus what they were able to do. And he said exactly what you said. There, I was with my community. I was with my family. I had this ability to go out and feel like I was doing something. And in here, I feel a little bit trapped. And you mentioned all of the privileges that they have in this bubble. And they're not denying that. There is more access to testing here than anywhere in the world. And by the way, coronavirus is disproportionately affecting Black and brown communities. That is not lost on these players. That being said, all of the privileges they have in here, there's some survivor's guilt that goes with that. Of, I have so much. What can I do to help? Instead of just saying, well, I'm good in my ivory tower, they're looking back and saying, well, on the one hand, it's kind of become a tagline. I'm human too. I'm not just a basketball player, but it's also true, because in this case, they are feeling that I am a basketball player. I do have the choice to turn the other way if I want to, potentially, as long as I am within these confines and not out on the street seen as just another Black man. But while I am in here, I am feeling that guilt, and I need to be able to figure out how to deal with that, how to help people, how to do something about it. And so that is adding another layer to what they are feeling without being able to protest, without being able to go home and see their loved ones go on a run and cope outside of the bubble.
I think that's such important context because I hear people just not getting it, and what these guys are feeling and going through is so real. Malika, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. As we go to break here, Zach referenced it. I do want to play the sound from Doc Rivers after the game last night. He's addressing the shooting of Jacob Blake and just so emotional. Listen to his voice. This is a man who had people burn down his house because he was married to a white woman. He has been through so much over the years, and here he is watching it again. Take a listen.
It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. We're the ones that need to be scared. We're the ones having to talk to every black child. What white father has to give his son a talk about being careful if you get pulled over? It's just ridiculous. And it just keeps going. There's no charges. Breonna Taylor, nothing. All we're asking is you live up to the Constitution. That's all we're asking for everybody.
It's been so hard, so ridiculous. We've turned it into something as a joke, right? As a way to cope. 2020, am I right? Come see this meme I just got off. But just because we are all figuring out ways to fight our way through doesn't mean it's not taking its toll. And for Paul George, this past week or so, the toll has been all too heavy and too real. Paul revealed last night that he has been in, quote, a very dark place, dealing with anxiety and depression, feeling trapped in the monotony and distance of the NBA bubble. PG found himself getting into his own head, and the worse he felt, the worse he played. Usually the advice for that would be to just get away from basketball for a while, except, bubble. Paul not only couldn't get away from basketball, he couldn't even get away from the Dallas Mavericks because, of course, they're in the bubble, too. And he couldn't spend a day just clearing his head by letting his young kids climb all over him. In fact, the only way for him to connect with his family was by picking up his phone, a phone full of social media posts about how terrible he was. Same for when he turned on his TV. And he was playing badly, like historically badly, in games 2, 3, and 4 of this series. Paul had scored just 34 points total over 3 games, shooting less than 25% from the floor in each game. No regular rotation player had shot that poorly in a stretch in the past 60 years. Here he is explaining.
Underestimated mental health, honestly. I had anxiety, a little bit of depression, just being locked in here, and I just wasn't there. I checked out, and it was, games 2, 3, 4. I wasn't there. I felt like I wasn't there. But shout out to the people that was in my corner and the people that gave me the words. Shout out Laura. They helped big time. They helped get me right, put me back in great spirits. I can't thank them enough.
The people who reached out included family, friends, former NBA players, the Clippers team psychiatrist, and then there was Doc Rivers. Honestly, if all Rivers did was coach basketball, he'd still be one of the best coaches in the league right now. But the reason he's among the very best in the history of the game is his ability to manage things off court in times of crisis. 6 years ago, it was Doc who shepherded the Clippers through the Donald Sterling situation. And last night in his post-game press conference, it was Doc again who spoke for the entire NBA, giving a powerful sermon on the Jacob Blake shooting and what it feels like right now being black in America. Hearing Doc talk can just be so cathartic, and it's that same empathy that he provided Paul George between games 4 and 5, sitting Paul down for a long heart-to-heart. Here's Doc describing it, and Montrezl Harrell, too.
This is not a normal environment, okay? It just isn't. PG and I sat in the room, in my room after the game, and we just had a long talk. Not all about basketball, really. And You know, several players did it. Guys are knocking on his door.
So we just wanted to kind of just get him out of that, man. Just get him out of the room, just play video games, just constantly be around him to show him that we here with him. And I think they did a great job for him because he went out and played carefree basketball.
Indeed, he did. Paul looked like a totally different player in Game 5, engaged, confident, and lethal. He hit 12 of his 18 shots. He was 4 of 8 from 3, and he did it all so fast, he made history again, this time in the positive direction, becoming the only player to score 35 points in 25 minutes or less in a playoff game since the shot clock era started back in 1954. By the time the night was over, the Clippers had a 154-111 win over Dallas, a franchise record for the most points ever scored in a playoff game, and a 3-2 edge in this series. So is everything just fixed now for Paul George? No, the human brain doesn't really work that way. But now, at least PG knows he's not alone, and that if he falls into a bad place again, he also knows that he can come out of it. Honestly, in 2020, that's probably the best any of us can hope for. So, Perk, given all of that, I want to bring you back in on Paul George here. Do you feel like he turned a corner last night, just in terms of his rhythm and play during the game?
Well, he did, Rachel, but me watching the game, I didn't see the emotions. Like, yes, he had a monster game. When you look up, he had 35 points, and, you know, he was that prolific scorer that we all known Paul George to be, and that star. But I didn't see the emotions. And then listening to his post-game interview, I still didn't feel the emotions. I kind of felt bad for him in a way, because listening to him talk and for him to say that he was in a dark place and that his family and friends had to reach out to him, and him and Doc Rivers had to have a conversation one-on-one in the room together, and multiple teammates had to uplift him. I've never had to deal with that or seen a player or a superstar player deal with that. Usually, you know, when they have a bad games, especially when you're on a contender team, you tend to bounce back because this is what you signed up for. And it's a difficult situation, Rachel, but, you know, me personally, when I signed for $40 million in Oklahoma City, I was getting all type of heat from the media, from social media, about not producing number-wise, and I had to deal with it. Because my grandfather called me, he said, this is the career that you chose. This is what you signed up for. This is what comes with the territory. And yes, when you have off nights, social media, people are going to talk about you. They're going to be the same people like myself that are going to praise you when you do well. And you have to learn to cope with that. Now, listen, I think it's way deeper than basketball. I honestly do. I think it's something that's going on with PG personally. That's just my personal assumptions. But at the end of the day, everyone in the bubble is going through a trying time. And no, everyone is built different. LeBron James said it. Hey, we're built for this, and I get it, right? But at the end of the day, all I'm saying is when you sign on that dotted line to become an NBA player, it's the good and it's the bad that comes with it, and you're under a microscope by the whole world.
Perk, you still got people giving you stuff about your numbers on social media, including a teammate, an ex-teammate of yours. Look, I think it sends the right message to the general populace, and especially men in general, for Paul George, someone of his stature, of his ability to talk so openly about anxiety and depression. We have decades and decades and decades of evidence from academic studies. Money, fame, power, none of it inoculates you from those problems. And I think it's important, especially for men, to be able to talk about them. But look, this is Paul George. Paul George is a boss. Paul George was going toe-to-toe with LeBron James in the playoffs when he was 22 years old. He was going to turn a corner eventually, whether it was Game 5, Game 6, or the next round, assuming the Clippers advance. Paul George, whatever he's going through, is still Paul George. And I think last night reminded everybody, yeah, once he gets right, this dude is Paul George. He's a boss.
Well, you get extra points, by the way, because I heard you on your podcast a couple days ago talking about Paul George's struggles, and you said, yeah, he's probably going to come out tonight and score 35, and indeed, he scored 35. All right, Marcus
35.
Morris. He had an incident with Luka Doncic. As long as we're talking about last night's game, Morris stepped on Luka's ankle, which is, of course, a significant injury that Doncic is nursing. The Mavs have him listed now as questionable for Thursday's Game 6. There's some debate about whether this act was intentional. You at home can take a look at the footage, decide for yourself. Morris denied that it was intentional. On Twitter, here is what he wrote. I played this game with a level of respect for myself and other players. To think I would try to injure someone is crazy to me. 10 years going against the best. I stand on morals and hard work. I compete and leave it out there every game. So, Zach, how do you expect the league to handle this when they look at the footage?
Hey, look, if you can look at that footage and conclude that Marcus Morris did that on purpose, you are Sherlock Holmes. You're a better investigator than I am. I understand everybody wants to be angry about it. I understand that the Morris twins are tough and physical and that he did walk in a weird way toward Luka Doncic. Obviously intentional. And I would be very surprised if the league punishes him because that's a slippery slope. You start punishing people for stuff that you can't really tell is intentional or looks kind of normal and kind of not normal. You're all of a sudden going to be punishing players for lots and lots of things. I mean, I know everybody wants to be mad about everything, but I can't look at that and say it's blatant or obvious. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, Zach, you might need to turn off your notifications on your social media because the Luka Doncic fans are going to be in your mentions today. So here's my thing about the whole situation. I see it 50-50, right? I could see what certain people say it could be intentional, especially Dallas Mavericks fans or Luka Doncic fans. I could see, on the other hand, what people could say, like Zach Lowe, and including myself, that I'm torn in between, that he didn't do it intentionally, and here's why. Marcus Morris has been picking up Luka 94 feet since game 1, right? The Clippers were up 30+ at the time that this incident happened. I didn't see clear-cut evidence that he did it intentionally. But on the other hand, this is how this works. Mark Cuban, Rick Carlisle, and the front office of the Dallas Mavericks, I'm pretty sure right now, are on the call with the NBA, sending in this footage.
Mark Cuban
and
is so
trying to make
shy
a
and
case
retiring,
that
Perk. I
says
can't
I
imagine
would
he
be
would
too.
ever call the league office.
No, I would never call it, but I'm telling you, this is how it worked, Rachel.
Yes.
A guy that was victim, a guy that I went through so many of these, and this is how it worked. The league, that one team is going to call and say, hey, we need you to look into that. The league is going to call Morris twin and say, get his side of it, and then they're going to investigate the situation. Now, if they do happen to say it is evidence and we're going to issue out a punishment to the NBA, it should not be a suspension. It should be a fine and move on if they say and decide that he should be punished.
Fair.
Yeah, look, it is complicated. To me, it's the body language after he stepped on the ankle. If you see, we've been running it through this whole segment. He kind of reaches for him to catch him, and he bends over. He looks like, wow, what just happened? That, to me, is relevant as well. And it's interesting, Kristaps Porzingis, by the way, also questionable for the next game. And Rick Carlisle was just addressing the media. He said, I would like to be more optimistic than I am about KP. So it sounds like they won't have KP and might not have Luka. We'll have to find out. We will keep you posted on whether there's any discipline for Marcus Morris as well. All right, coming up, is Jamal Murray turning into a superstar? That is what his coach said after last night's performance. Stick around. You're watching. Take a look at today's Dream Makers, brought to you by Sprite. The More Than a Vote initiative, spearheaded by LeBron James, includes a number of high-profile current and former athletes, including our own Kendrick Perkins on this show today. More Than a Vote has partnered with the Dodgers to make Dodger Stadium a polling place for the November general election, marking the first time a Major League Baseball team has offered its facility as a voting center. Kudos to all involved. I know that initiative and that group is far from done yet. Perk, I know you got more in store for us. We can't wait to see it all unfold.
Fun guy, what's up, baby?
What it do, baby? Make, miss. It's a make or miss league, baby. That's it.
That's it, baby. Bully ball. Luka throwing it ahead to Boban. Kawhi rips it out of his hands. Zach, this was incredible. And then, by the way, when they botched the next possession and Reggie couldn't really get it together. Kawhi's like, I didn't give you the ball for that. Didn't give up the ball for that. Is there anyone else in the NBA who can do this move? Look at this.
Hey, look, Boban's been hurting the Clippers, and we always are told pick on someone your own size. Well, Kawhi went a little bit better than that, so you got to do what you got to do.
Perk, this was awesome.
I mean, Rachel, they call him the Claw for a reason. This is why. He's been the best player in this series, and he's demanding respect. He's doing it on both ends. That's why they call him the Claw.
Absolutely. Misbalance. Nugs Jazz. End of the first quarter. Jokic jumps off the wrong foot, hoists up a runner, and it drops. Perk, is this a little Steve Nash for you? We're going to throw Nash up on the screen. What do you think?
It is. And you know what? It's more impressive when it's coming from a 7-footer, Rachel. Big Jokic is in his bag right now. Some of the things he do, I'm so jealous because I could never do in my career. But yes, it is a little Steve Nash-like.
Steve Nash was one of the all-time great shooters. He had a million different trick shots, but Perk is right. For a 7-footer to do that, shout out to the Stoneboard Shuffle.
There you go. Make theatrics. Luka gets in the paint. All right, watch this. The ball gets poked away, and Luka flails, and he gets the whistle. Now, Doc, he could not believe there was gambling in this establishment. Perk, are you just as shocked that there's a whistle?
No, I'm not shocked, because Luka had been harping on the refs and getting on the refs the previous calls, and Luka is a crafty guy, and he reminds me of Kyle Lowry. So, to me, I feel like he just got the possession back, Rachel. Doc was wrong in this. Luka did not flop.
I'm not shocked. I admire the theatrics. You got an arm flail, you got a head flail, you got an agonized look on the face. It's all there. Great job.
Look, the fact that Doc has a player who earlier this season had one of the most dramatic flops fall down we've seen without anyone 2 feet from him doesn't get to be surprised. All right, miss rim protection. Donovan Mitchell crossing up Jokic. Finishes with the thunderous jam over MPJ. Zach, can the Nuggets stop this guy in Game 6?
No. I mean, they can pray. They figured out some stuff in the fourth quarter last night. I thought their defense was finally on point. They blitzed them a little bit. Jokic dropping back is not going to work, but I think their best strategy is pray.
Right now, Rachel, this is what you call snatching the screws out of the rim, and it's in the clutch time. Donovan Mitchell has been playing phenomenal, and I said that he's auditioning for a Batman role for the Utah Jazz. Well, guess what? He passed the test thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to stick with this Nuggets-Jazz game because it's been so fun to watch Donovan going up against Jamal Murray. And with the Nuggets facing elimination, Murray just stepped up for his team such a big way. 42 points, 33 in the second half. That is what's so key to me, extending the Nuggets season, forcing a Game 6. After the game, Nuggets head coach Michael Malone said about Murray, quote, "The young man is growing up and turning into a superstar on the biggest stage. I couldn't be more proud of him." Now, superstar should still mean something, and maybe he's right. Perk, do you think that Murray is a superstar in these playoffs?
He is a rising superstar, and he is a star right now in these playoffs. The numbers that he has been putting up has been crazy. I just don't get what's up with Quinn Snyder and not double teaming this guy. Like, get the ball out of his hands. You cannot stop him. He just dropped 50 on you in but the game before that, and then all of a sudden he goes on the tear and you letting him play one-on-one, trap the ball. Get it out of his hands.
There are very few guys in the league who go nuclear like Jamal Murray. When he made that spinning airborne layup over Rudy Gobert, I almost fell off my chair. But superstars, not just stars, superstars, they do it every single night. If they have a bad game here and there, it's because they shot badly and they make up for it with defense, rebounding, passing, something like that. Jamal Murray might be the most inconsistent player in the NBA. If he wants to be a superstar, he can't score 50 every night, but he's got to be an A player every single night.
He might also have to win a playoff series, right? Like in this playoffs, if you're talking about a superstar in this playoffs, and I know he's been on the team winning a playoff series last season, but I just mean that the idea of a superstar to me is a guy who pushes you over the edge, who wins it, so that if he leads this team from behind and wins this series, he will get a little bit more of that moniker for me. He's such a talent, though. His work ethic is crazy. I am so excited to see him develop, and who knows, maybe he's going to do it. We'll have to see how this plays out. All right, coming up, the Pacers fired Nate McMillan today. Was that fair? Boy, if you listen to everyone in the NBA this morning, we'll play you some of that sound. They say no. We will discuss it. First, though, here's the latest edition of Jump at the Symphony. And indeed, it is